The Tibetan pilgrim Dharm Swamin has pointed out that when he visited the Mahabodhi temple in the year 1234 of the Common Era, it was under considerable Ceylonese influence. None but Sri Lankan monks could carry out the worship of the Buddha or sleep in the courtyard of the temple complex. Referring to the overall multivalent nature of the place of worship, the Tibetan pilgrim Dharm Swamin says, quote, "The procedure of the image worship in Buddhist temples of Bihar and Nepal was at this time very similar to that in Hindu shrines. The Panchmit Snan, or the bath in curds, milk, honey, sugar and ghee, had become quite common in the Buddhist temples." Unquote. The Gaya Mahatmya, which is the concluding portion of the Vayu Puran and was composed around the time when the international pilgrimage to the Mahabodhi temple almost came to a halt, further cemented the multivalent character of the Mahabodhi temple when the Brahmins of Gaya began to officiate as priests at the worship of the Buddha Dharamheshwar at Bodhgaya, which formed part of the Gaya Kshetra. Though Sri Lankan pilgrims appear to have begun to visit the Mahabodhi shortly after Ashoka's son Mahendra and his daughter Sanghamitra went to proselytize there, international pilgrimage became an established phenomenon by the latter half of the 4th century of the Common Era, when the Indian king Samudragupta allowed Sri Lankans to build a rest house, Sangaram, near the Mahabodhi tree. From then onwards, a large number of the important Buddhist structures in the Mahabodhi temple complex are attributed to Sri Lankan patrons. At times, the control of Sri Lankan monks over the Mahabodhi temple and its ecclesiastical affairs appears to have been strong enough that none but they could carry out the worship of the Buddha or sleep in the courtyard of the temple. The hegemony of the Sri Lankan monks continued till the Trushka attacks, when the temple became derelict towards the beginning of the 14th century. About 4 centuries later, Shaivite Giri Mahants took up a permanent residence here. The practice of derelict index sites with a sacred background being reused by other Indic religions was not uncommon during the ancient and medieval period. Moreover, multiple affiliation was quite normal rather than exceptional among the various Indic faiths. Consequent upon the occupation of the temple by the Shaivite Giri Mahants, Buddhist symbols, rituals or images were left undisturbed. Remarkably, the Shaiva worshippers embraced all that was there and nothing was destroyed. With the passage of time, the Mahants became the owners not only of the land on which the Mahabodhi temple stands, but also large estate consisting of over 3,000 acres of land surrounding this temple through many royal decrees of the Mughal emperors and their feudatories. When, after securing permission from the Mahant through the British government, the Burmese started their repair work in January 1876, it was found that Burmese workers were making a mess of the old temple. This gave a good excuse to the government, which took on the responsibility of the restoration work, thus becoming a stakeholder in the sacred space. During the restoration, demolition and reconstruction during the 1880s, the Hindus and the Buddhists continue to share the sacred space occupied by the Mahabodhi temple without any issue. However, some of the mischievous British Indologists intensified their efforts to drive a wedge between the Hindus and the Buddhists. The campaign of Dharampal for the sole management of the temple by Buddhists continued until after India's independence, when the Bodhgaya Temple Act of 1949 was passed on 19 June 1949, and the government of Bihar assumed responsibility for the management of the temple. Acceding to India's request, UNESCO declared the Mahabodhi temple complex on 27th of June 2002 as the 18th Indian cultural site to be awarded the UNESCO's World Heritage Monument. The Bodhgaya Temple Amendment Act of 2013 allowed the Gaya District Magistrate to be the chairman of the Temple Management Committee, irrespective of his or her religious affiliation. Though people of all Indic faiths are still free to pray and worship at the Mahabodhi temple, they do so as if it were now only a Buddhist shrine. The 64-foot great Buddha statue in Dhyan Mudra, that is meditation pose, is another popular spot in Bodhgaya. The statue is made of a combination of sandstone and red granite blocks and is surrounded by smaller sculptures of Buddha's 10 disciples. It was consecrated on 18 November 1980 by the 14th Dalai Lama. The Bodhgaya Archaeological Museum, situated close to the Mahabodhi temple complex, is another place which is very popular with the tourists. It houses many rare antiques consisting of statues of the Buddha as well as different Buddhist and Hindu deities. Buddhist temples of different countries have also been constructed here in Bodhgaya as a consequence of the request by the Sri Lankan king Shri Meghavan, who ruled in Sri Lanka between 352 and 379 of the Common Era. The Indian king Samudragupta in the year 335-380, that was the period when he ruled in India, he allocated a piece of land to the Sri Lankans with extraterritorial rights, and a monastic rest house, that is Sangaram, was constructed here towards the north of the Mahabodhi temple tree. During the 19th century, the Burmese were allowed to build a Dharamshala here, that is a rest house near the Mahabodhi temple. And after India's independence in 1947, different countries including Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Thailand, Cambodia, Taiwan, Japan, Vietnam, Bhutan, Tibet, Laos, China, Mongolia, Korea and Nepal were invited by the government of India to build their temples and rest houses in the vicinity of the Mahabodhi temple complex. So large number of temples and rest houses of various Buddhist countries have come into existence in and around the Mahabodhi temple complex, and also the Sujata Stoop across the river from the Mahabodhi temple is this Sujata Stoop. Across the river from the Mahabodhi temple is the Sujata Stoop, located at Sujatagad near the village of Bakror, situated about 1 kilometer from the Mahabodhi temple across the river, Nilanjana. Excavations by the Archaeological Survey of India at Bakror in 1973-74 and again in the year 2001 and between 2001 and 2006 uncovered a stupa with a round two-level terraced structure 11 meters high on the square east-west north-south platform. The stupa, originally built in the 2nd century BCE, has revealed traces of 3 phases of additions and expansion from the Gupta to the Pala period. Thank you so much.